Okay, the recording started, everyone. And again, at the end of this webinar, sometime between now and tomorrow, later morning, I'll have a link on Blackboard to be able to access this webinar as well. Okay, and hopefully, if you have any questions, please unmute or use the chat. I can't, I'm not watching the chat all the time. But as I do, I'll try to pick up on some questions. And again, sometimes if I, for some reason, I get muted, when I'm looking this way, I'm actually looking at the slides. And if I look like I'm talking and you can't hear me, please unmute and let me know. All right. Okay. We'll go from there. So this is a really interesting topic. And I know a lot of students that have come through this program intend to start their own businesses. And what I've done is I've tried to find some additional information to be able to help people really get started. And there's a couple of things that I learned that I only wish that I knew, before I started my businesses. It would have helped me to be able to really understand, how to be a really good manager. And I'll get to that, couple of slides as we go there. All right. I'm going to talk about, the Business Development Bank, and they're just a plethora of information that you can access for free, especially, if you want to know anything about entrepreneurship and how to start a business. They're the kind of people that can help you, right? So we'll get started and we'll go from there. Okay, so in week 3, there's a series of deliverables that are going to be required. So there's like 8 surveys that you have to do. And the reason why I'm asking you to get them done, and this is wrong here, it should be, January 27th. That's a misprint on the top. So that's next Monday when they're due. And the reason being is that if you look at this particular notice here, on February 12th, you're going to have to put in assignment number 2. And these surveys will really give you a sense of, again, getting a baseline on where you're at. And you'll be able to answer those questions with a lot more rigor. And just to get back to, assignment number 1, which was a pre-assessment survey, it's really to give you a sense of where are you now. And then at the end of the term, you're going to do assignment number 6, which is the post-assessment survey. And you'll be able to reflect on, did I learn a few things about myself? Do I really have a good sense of, what my capabilities and my skills and my aptitudes and my drive and passion are related to, so that at the end, you should have a good sense of, all right, I really should know what I want to do. And that's where assignment number 3 comes in, because assignment number 3 is basically a setup where you're looking at a college student that needs to get ready for AI or artificial intelligence, and what they need to go through and where they need to find information. So armed with all that stuff, you'll be able to do, a personal mission and a personal vision for yourself and how to take that forward. And I only wished that I could have had this, when I started, because, I learned a lot of things through pain, and most people do. And it's best to be able to, pick up on the experience of people. And that's why mentorship could be the best thing that you could do during your career as you leave this program. You find people that are successful in the culture of the organization that you're working in, and you ask them to help you out and give you some good advice and be the mirror about what they see about you, and then how you could really excel based on your life goals. All right, so those are all those things that are coming together in this course that I hope that when you leave this program, you really have a good sense of, hey, you know what, I know what it will take, and I'll have an appreciation for what it could be like if I decided that I wanted to be an elite performer in whatever occupation that I decide I want to get into. Right, so that's where that is. So we start with these 8 surveys. They'll really help you in terms of getting a sense of what this is all about. We're going to talk about locus of control, by the way. It's probably test-worthy information to understand. And then there's going to be 2 group team exercises, and that's why I was so adamant on having your teams come together and coalesce and put together this learning team charter to really get going. And so just to be really clear on participation topic 3A, You pick one of these two, just one. So you either brainstorm issues with managing a small business, or you brainstorm issues with managing a family business. And this is part of topic 3 in terms of managing family businesses. The dynamics are very different than what they are, in regular organized, not profit type businesses. And it's good to know, what that's all about. And again, when you talk about this small business, you're going to pick one, or a family business. Again, I'm hoping that you read, what I sent you about, critical thinking. The more specific that you could make those choices, like actually even name the business, and describe it a little bit, so that the more choices the more specific you can get, the more meaningful that your answers are going to be. And again, brainstorming issues on managing a small business. It could be a business that you want to create, or it could be a business, that is operating in today's world. That's up to you as well as a team. Okay. And again, you can see here that I put a link in. Here's a Alberta Business Startup Checklist. And if you go to that, it might give you some really great ideas about naming these issues that with managing your business choice. Okay, so here's a little more information, is that, once you select this business, then you're going to use that business selection in topic 4 as well. And there's going to be questions in 4A and 4B about that. So that's why it's really important to really get this nailed down, in topic 3. And again, here's what I just basically talked about. It can be an existing business, it could be a family business, or it could be a business that you'd like to create and launch. And participation activities 4A and 4B, it's going to elaborate more on that business. Like 4A is going to take a look at the role, a mandate and vision of the organization. And then 4B is going to be about the organizational structure. And so what I'd like you to do as well is don't pick a very small business, like a one-person business. The businesses that you should pick are at least maybe 5 people or more, so that your organizational part in 4B is a lot more meaningful. Okay, so that's really what we're trying to prepare you for in this case. So again, on 3B now, we switch gears and we talk about being an entrepreneur. And the thing is that there's a lot of information out there. There's another article that I put out, and again, this is a picture of a link. So just copy it down, or go to the Blackboard topic 3 to be able to get that link, and then you can get in on that information. And just to understand that there's different kinds of entrepreneurs. All right, so there's the traditional entrepreneur, like Elon Musk, founder of an organization, many organizations. But there's what they call an intrapreneur, and that's more of an old example is Lee Iacocca. Inside of Ford, he created the Ford Mustang. He drove that project as if he owned the company. And in my experience, I've been quite a bit of an entrepreneur as well. I actually created a turnkey project in the power business, where it made it easy for gas producers to convert their compressor drives from gas-driven to electric. And I put that all together, and to a point where it was just a turnkey operation, and that was me being an entrepreneur, as if it was my own business. And I'll tell you, I really got a lot out of it. So that's where that is. So what I'm asking you to do in 3B is come up with the 10 strengths of effective entrepreneurs. And again, from critical thinking point of view, short reasons why each strength is important from a management perspective. Okay, so that's what that's all about. So we're going to start a little bit here with, I want to talk to you about my story, and then I'm going to get you into some groups again, into the actual rooms, in terms of breakouts. But what the objective here is that different types of organizations require different management styles. All right. And by the time you get into your discussion group, I want you to sort of share with each other how different jobs and different organizations require those different approaches. So here's a little bit of my experience. So again, when I was very young, I worked in a bakery. And guess what? The bakery was family owned, and there were three brothers. And each brother had a different role and had a different disposition in that role. All right. So the oldest brother was the traditionalist. And that oldest brother, he inherited, the bakery from their father, and it was really important to him, to manage that brand of what they've been building. The middle brother was an entrepreneur, and he ran the sales organization for the bakery, and he drove. His management style was much different, was all about results. And then the younger brother, again, was younger, so he was more of a modern manager. And he ran it, by measuring things and getting things done. And so that, who I worked for at the time, I had to shift, how I behaved, because you needed to be able to fit in with, the different sort of subcultures that were in that bakery because of the brothers. And sometimes it got to a head where, they didn't quite agree on certain things as well. So the experience management style was really important there. And then, as a student, I was a hard rock driller, and the focus, or the mining company, International Nickel Company in Canada, the focus was on operational excellence. It was all about production, and this involves stringent safety protocols and the efficiency of operations. And sustainability was not an emphasis at that time. It was profit. That's what they were driving for. And the culture was a sort of a macho miner culture, championing production prowess, so to speak. Whoever could produce more was regarded as more important in the company. So you could see that based on, a different industry, a different company, a different culture, management, takes on a different a different aspect. And then when I graduated, I graduated initially as a chemist, and I worked, after college, in a highly structured, safety-focused management style, in the refinery. And leaders were focused on compliance and regulations and maintaining operational efficiency. And guess what? It was heavily unionized, and so that the expectations were part of a shared leadership. They really worked with the labor agreement that was in place to be able to make sure that all parties really were satisfied in going to that. And then I soon became a chemist in that area, and again, it was a different style of manager. And then as I got to be a process engineer, I worked for Ontario Hydronuclear, and this was all about, highly disciplined, safety-centric, all kinds of, triple reliability. So if something fails, something else could pick up, and all about compliance and crisis management and things. So it really was a different environment to work in as well. And again, it's a different management style, and you behaved a different way. So that's my story. I can go on here, but you can read this as we go through. And again, now I'm working at Red Deer College, and it's a collaborative and student-centered approach, and leaders must focus on academic excellence and student engagement. So each organization that I worked for had unique needs and different management styles that were driven by unique organizational culture, as well as the industry and the stakeholder and the competitive demands on the markets and industries. So there's all kinds of drivers of what I'm trying to say here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you, in breakout rooms, and I'd like you to just talk to each other about, what have you experienced? How did it make you feel? What did you learn from it? Can you comment on how you felt? And were you able to characterize, the style of management used? What worked, what didn't work? So I'm going to try to put those questions on a broadcast so that you can go back. But keep in mind, these are the questions. and I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms. We're going to do about, about 7 minutes. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm opening the rooms right now. Okay, we should be back here right now. Let me see. Okay, is everyone back? Is there a? Yeah. Okay, close. Okay, okay, close this one.
To handle them well.
Okay, we should all be back now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. So how do you think that went? Did you learn anything? Anybody want to volunteer any comment?
Yes, it's good to know that even in the last class and this class, the views which everyone has, the experience which everyone has, it's interesting. And the thing is, being a manager is not easy. It's not peaceful at all.
Yeah, I know that, I had a fairly long career, and each situation is different, and you have to learn, what works and what doesn't work, and again, it comes down to what industry that you're in. Some industries are just so competitive. The culture is cutthroat. It's just whatever you need to do to be at the top. So the industry, based on the company that you work for, the type of business, the type of customers that you have, the culture in the organization, it all has an impact on how you manage and how you're successful. And we're gonna learn a lot about situational management. You basically work to a situation, and what you'll find in those surveys that you're doing is that you're going to find out that you have a certain predominance in a certain area in terms of style, and what the information and the knowledge tells you is that that you need to work, you're comfortable in that particular style, and you try to pick the company and the culture to be able to align with what's going on, but you
Sorry to
really should
interrupt,
have.
but I don't think I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, so sorry, who made the comment? Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay right now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're pretty clear.
Okay, so
Yes.
what I was, sorry? Okay, so what I was saying is that you should have, at least 3 or 4 management styles that you know how to operate in. And that's what we're gonna, cover as we go through, this particular orientation. And I heard, I learned that the hard way, because sometimes I was in a management position where I had union employees and then I had professional employees, and I had to treat them differently. I had to be a different manager for the different types of occupations. So, those are the kind of things that we're gonna go through, in this course. Okay. So let's just go from the current slide here. Okay, so where we are right now, if we, sorry, I'm just setting up my screen so I can see things. Okay. Okay, so where we are right now is that we're along this timeline, and we're really, the perspective here is in large manufacturing. I mean, this is where the management theory started coming out, and then as we got into more and more international business, this is where the management theory started coming out as well. And So just along the lines of, I talked about deliverables. It's really important to go back to these presentations. They're the e-text presentations, and again, you can find them, on the in the folders on topic 3 in terms of Blackboard, and then you can click on here, and there's a lot of rich information that you could learn. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, thanks for that, telling me that you couldn't see the slides. So 1B, the supplement, it's on topic 3. You go into that folder and you can find it. And then 1C is a whole piece on entrepreneurship. And we're mainly going to talk a lot about entrepreneurship in this particular topic as well. Okay, so here's just a helpful hint, and it's about what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of give you more insights as to how you can shape where you're going. And what I found in my experience is that the people who went into business, be it marketing, be it finance or whatever, the people that had additional certifications, and this one in particular is a PMP certification. So it's a project management certification. They succeeded a lot more than other people, because PMP certification really gives you a good grounding on how to negotiate, how to set up schedules, how to bring teams together, how to problem solve, and in particular how to just manage the overall project in a very rigorous way. And what I'd suggest is that have a look at this, especially some of you, if you want to get into the higher management levels. And oh, by the way, in my experience, just teaching in colleges, a lot of the associate deans have a PMP certification. Because it's just a great general piece in training. So I just wanted to share that with you. All right. And then another one is that this guy, all right, Michael Gerber, I only wish I could have read this book, before I started my businesses. I had several businesses on the go, from the early 2000s, and this person writes in lay terms, and he really kind of lays it out in terms of how, especially small businesses fail. And he's got all kinds of statistics here, and it's just the book reads really well. And I'd strongly recommend that if you're thinking about starting your own business, have a look in this book. And if anything, here's the short term, the short form, the summary link. Go to the link and find out what it's all about. All right. So let me just kind of give you sort of a small introduction of where we're going in terms of the business itself. So when you do planning, and this is the company that I used to run, Crytel. You do a vision, you do mission, you do goals and objectives. And I know a lot of you are in first year and you're probably not so familiar with that. So I'm going to try to kind of break it down so that you understand where we're going in this course. But what it all comes down to it, in my experience, these are the 3 main things that you should know in the business that you're going to create. One is the value proposition. And basically what the value proposition is what are you offering to the customer that's giving them value, and giving them value in terms of getting a lot out of it for the price that they're paying. And when you really understand that, and your employees understand that, it makes management much, much easier. Okay, so you have this value proposition, but how are you going to go to market, and how are you going to develop competitive advantage? And I'm going to be talking about competitive advantage for the remainder of this course, because strategy is all about creating competitive advantage, having the edge, so that you could succeed, and you've got the viability to go forward and grow your business and whatever. But here's what I found is that you can have a great value proposition, you can have a fantastic strategy, but if you don't understand how you do business, your business model, and it's simple. I mean, in terms of a business model, it's like, what are your costs? What are your revenues? Who are your key customers? And the reason why I say that, there's a statistic out there, right? Only 9% of workers in North America, only 9% understand what impact their job has on the strategy of the organization. And so how can they help if they don't know, if they're doing something important that can improve the competitive advantage of your company, all right? And this is taught to them through them understanding the business model. Here's where you fit in, right? So that's really key. And so that, and I'm going to just show you, a couple of canvases that I use to be able to work with customers and, like in my consulting business. But here, when we start with the value proposition, there's a person called Alexander Osterwalder, and he built these canvases. And what you understand in the value proposition is, what keeps your customer up at night and how can you fix their problem, right? And you translate that into, what are they suffering from? What's really bugging them? How can they be successful? What are their pains, right? And then, oh, by the way, how can you really give them a leg up? Like what are their gains? And then, the customer jobs is, what do they need to do? Like starting from even how did they find you? How do they, how does the customer find the business to, how they use your product or service? Those are what they call customer jobs. And if you figure out what this is, well, then you can create this value map. And we're going to talk about the value chain, in this course as well. And so on your side of it, you develop the products and services that are going to meet the needs of your customers. You're going to consciously look at, what gives them the leg up? What gains can you provide for them to make them, do their business better or improve their life or whatever? And then how are you going to relieve some of their pains? So that's what a value proposition is all about. And if you take a look at, the business model, it's made up of, the value proposition, a revenue model and the value chain. And we're going to talk about value chains as well. But in that model, the business model, it's all about, what are your core values? How can the customer resonate? The more that you resonate your core values with the customer, the more that you're going to get loyal customers. Who are you going to target? What products and services? Which leads to, my hero here, Alex Osterwalder. And this is, when I was working with small businesses, this is a one-page business model that we would fill out, and it just changed the way that, especially, small entrepreneur owners started managing their business. And you start listing, what are their key partners? What are their key activities? What are their key resources? Let's talk about what is your value proposition? What relationships do you have? What channels, do you advertise in? What channels do you market in? And then, what's your cost structure and where are your largest costs and your most important costs that you have to be on top of? And then, where are your most important revenue streams in terms of profit margin? What revenue stream has a better profit margin and why you should pay attention to that? So that's what this is all about. And then I just wanted to introduce you to the BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada. And they provide just a world of information. And here's the link. There's free tools, advice for entrepreneurs. Maybe there's some things that you need to do in your marketing course. Some of you are going to be taking marketing courses. You'll find all kinds of information there. And here's the kind of types of information that they'll provide you. Start or buy a business, marketing and sales, technology, change of ownership, entrepreneurial skills. So there's all kinds of things, just going to this link and registering and getting on their newsletter, and you can find out about it. And last but not least is they actually have an entrepreneur's toolkit that can give you all kinds of information. Okay, so is there anything on the test about this? No, but I'm hoping that when you leave this, I've given you some insights as to how you can help yourself better in terms of being an elite performer. Okay, so one of the things we're going to talk about in this course as well is benchmarking, and that's, you should know what that is. And what that is that you go out and you find out the best in class, people doing the best things that you can emulate in your own business, to be able to be, much better, stronger, faster, cheaper, more profitable. And the thing is that it's a way of looking at how you can excel and become more successful. And what it's there for is to compare your own operations with that of competitors. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink here. And benchmarking is all part of total quality management, and including Six Sigma, which is the ultimate in a qualification in total quality management. And I'm going to talk about that at some other time. Okay, so okay, so those are all the sort of helpful hints, hopefully. And now we're going to get into the main pieces of the topic itself. And you can see already now that I've started to use some highlighting here. So the locus of control is really important, and you'll have a survey that you'll get into that and really get a sense of, do you have an internal locus of control, or do you have an external locus of control? And so entrepreneurs ultimately have an internal locus of control, which means that they don't see limitations out there. They don't see that, oh, well, the market is bad and I'll never succeed, rather than saying, okay, where are the hot spots or the bright spots in that market where I can succeed? So internal locus of control is really, how, making things happen. And then external locus of control is that you feel that everything, is boxing you in, that, things happen to you and there's nothing that you can do about it. So the more that you can generate this, this growth mindset and internal locus of control, the more that you're going to be able to, drive and make your future the way it can be. Okay, and then why do people start in businesses? Well, sometimes it's just because they want to, it's a personal objective. Or sometimes, they want to make a whole pile of money, or they want to, be creative in a certain field, or some want to be independent, or some, they want to get just added income, or some want to help their families, or provide products that not available elsewhere. So you might see that you're living in a country where there's a product that's in Europe that everybody uses and it's of great value, and you don't have it in your country. Well, then you'll say, okay, why don't I start an import business and I'll import that, or I'll actually manufacture that that particular product in my own country, because it's not available here. So those are the kind of things. And again, from this supplement 1B, this is where I took this information, and some of this information is critical because there's some questions in the test that will kind of relate to some of this. So pay attention to this, all right? But here's some key here, right? 86% of exporters are small and medium enterprises in Canada, which means you don't have to be a big, multi, like a conglomerate to be able to export or import, or you can be a small business and with a keen sense of what you need to do. And oh, by the way, there's organizations in Canada that can help you make sure that you get paid and all those things, like the Business Development Bank that can help you get set up to do that. And look at this, 98% of SMEs have fewer than 100 employees. And oh, by the way, the questions in the test are probably going to use this acronym SME. So, understand that it's, small and medium enterprises, all right? 80% are either, self-employed or have 1 to 4 employees. So in Canada, we're a country of small business. That's really what we are. And it's all these small businesses, that create, the overall gross domestic product for, our productivity. And so again, you can see that this is highlighted. You can see that, I actually highlighted this small and mid-sized enterprises so that you know what this is, and know that, that on average, 32% of Vietnamese created goods producing sector survived at least 18 years. All right. And if you take a look at this book that I told you about earlier, most businesses don't get past the 5 years. And some that are lucky get past to 10 years. So you really need to know about how you can make your business successful, going forward. And there's different types of ownership. And again, you can see that this is highlighted, and different sizes. So there's micro enterprises, less than 5 employees, up to large that are 500 plus employees. And we're going to go through, these areas of types of business, because this is where you have to manage differently, right? Given what it is, and so you need a different management style. You need a different decision-making style based on the type of business that you're in. And so we're going to talk about sole proprietorship and limited liability partnership and just plain partnership and these others. So this is what these slides are all about. So sole proprietorship, so right now, I used to be incorporated with Crytel, and now I just have a sole proprietorship. So I'm the owner, and in a sole proprietorship, I'm one person. I assume all the liabilities and debts and obligations. So how do I get around that? Is that I have, practice insurance, because if I did something where I could get sued, under Crytel, they could take my house. That's the way that the legalities are set up for sole proprietorship. So it's a different perspective. Then there's partnerships, 2 or more co-owners. So I had another business where I had a partner, and it was a security business that we ran in Calgary. And again, we were under, we were a partnership, but still under the sole proprietorship type constructs, where, there was no protection in case we got sued or anything. So we had, again, we had operating insurance. But in the partnership, there's some clear roles and responsibilities. So, I was mainly, responsible for the operations, and my partner was mainly responsible for administration, even though, we came together to do certain jobs together. But we had, responsibilities and accountabilities that were defined. Now, here's where I want you to really understand what a corporation does. All right. There's different kinds of corporation. There's a C corporation, and I'll explain that in the next slide. And this is on the C corporation, corporate income tax and employee tax. So they're separate. So the company gets taxed, as a corporation, and then the employees get taxed. But on an S-type corporation, the tax goes all the way through to the shareholders. All right, and this is just a government revenue type designation. So a C corporation, it stands for the subchapter C of Internal Revenue Code. And then the S corporation, again, is another subchapter, and basically it runs along these lines, so that the S corp, the tax passes through to the shareholders, and on the C corp, the corporation pays its tax, and then the employees and the owners pay employee tax. All right, on that way. So, and now we're going to get into the type of arrangements that I talked about. So there's licensing and franchising and management contracts. And I want to kind of, I want you to know what the difference is between licensing and franchising. All right. So licensing rights for a use of intangible property, so licensing, you could say that, like Microsoft, right? Microsoft will license their technology to an agent in France, and then that agent likely has all of France as their territory. So they don't own the product, but they're selling it, and they're licensed to do that, and then they can get a commission, by by selling it. The franchising is a bit different. It's sort of a form of licensing, but it operates differently, and I'll show you that in the next slides. And then management contracts, that's where you're paying for managerial assistance. So if you look in the Caribbean, and there may be a resort, well, there could be an international organization that actually manages that for the owners of that resort, and they're under contract, and they will assume a certain amount of the the revenues, or a set rate per month for managing that that operation. And then there's what we call turnkey operations. And usually it's industrial equipment manufacturers. So there's a premier engineering firm in Canada called SNC-Lavalin. And what they might do is they might go to Libya, and they would actually build a power plant for the Libyan government. All right. And then they would hire people to run that power plant. And then once it's running, they would turn it over, turnkey, and they'd get a certain amount of revenue for doing all of that, and that's what a turnkey operation is. And then there's joint ventures where, two parties will come together. Most of the time it's a 50-50 ownership because neither company has maybe the resources to invest in a particular country or whatever, and they can do it jointly because each party brings a certain, discipline and capability to the venture to be able to make it work. And then there's equity alliances, and what that is that that's where maybe more than two organizations come together and in collaboration to do something. So if you take a look at they used to be called triads. There would be a European company that would handle distribution. The Japanese would manufacture the automobiles, and then there would be a third party that would market it that, and then the home organization would provide all the distribution, and that would be an equity alliance. And so this is how it kind of works here. All right, is that the less that you own, all right, it's it's the less control that you have. All right, so that you can get to the point where you might have a sales contract, but you don't own any investment to make those sales. Whereas a wholly owned, they own everything. And so that when you're wholly owned, you have a less number of parties and you have much more control. So that's really what it's all about, is how much control. So as you move out into less investment, and you move up in more parties, you have less and less control, which means that, if you're really trying to protect your brand as an international company, and you've got all these parties doing all that work for you, and well, then you have less control to make sure that everybody's in line to be able to, to give integrity to that particular brand, then it could be very risky. So that's what that's all about. So when you look at it, you want to start a business, there's some options, right? So, especially if it's a small business, so you can start your own business, right from scratch, or you can buy an existing business. So someone's already, let me give you an example. All right. So, when I started some of my businesses in Calgary, I wanted to start a water treatment business. All right. And I could have gone and bought a water store. And I decided, I wanted to be able to put my spin on it. Or I could have bought a franchise, and I looked into, a water franchise, and I felt that, you were paying a lot of royalties to that company, the franchisor, and you weren't getting very much for it. So I decided to start my own business, right? So there's various reasons, for taking the part, if you're going to, if you don't have that much capital and you don't have that much know-how, you might look at purchasing a franchise, and so that you might get in, with less capital, but then again, you're going to pay, throughout the years that you're operating versus having all the capital to buy someone else's business, right? So here's a table that I'd like you to kind of go through, but you can see that, when you start your own business, you could start, lower, but it's highly variable. If you buy an existing, often it's higher due to the purchase price, and then initial franchise fee, it's ongoing royalties and other costs, that you're going to have to manage the whole time through. Starting your own business, you have full control, but higher risk, whereas on a franchise, it's an established, you're really buying know-how, right? So you buy a hamburger franchise, a McDonald's, well, it's all in, it's all been figured out. So there's not too much that could go wrong, and you have a lot of brand identity, so that you know that you're going to get sales the day you open the door. So those are the things. So when you start your own, pretty high risk versus a medium risk, and then when you buy an existing business, especially if you've got an established, set of clientele or whatever, it's lower risk. So these are the the different things that you should look at, when you're looking at this. So what I'd like you to do is that, again, we're kind of running out of time. So take a look at, what it takes to start your own versus not starting your own business. So you'll get all the, all the pros and cons over, starting your own business versus buying a business versus franchising, through. And then here's the difference between licensing. So licensing is an arrangement where licensors grants the licensee the right to use the intellectual property. The licensor has less control over how the license operates in their business. There's fees. This is how it's supported. Whereas franchising, it's a business model that you're buying. And, we talked about the business model. So, McDonald's has an established business model on how they do business and what their key costs are and where their revenues are and, who their customers are and all that. So that, that comes all with, what you're paying for, basically. And the franchisor, that's would be the head office of McDonald's, maintains a significant control over how these franchisees operate the business. There's clauses in there that if the franchisee doesn't respect certain ways of doing business or can't introduce their own products or those things, they can, and if they violate that, they can just stop the agreement, right? So that's what that's all about. So again, the key differences between licensing and franchising, it's the level of control that the franchisor has, the nature of the agreement, in terms of how much the purchaser has in terms of liberties to do what they need to do, and then the support and training and capability, that you get, especially franchises, they set you right up, right? So those are the differences. Those are the entry modes. And then there's the family business, right? And that's pretty key. And there's different decisions, in designing and deciding what you're going to do and how you're going to create value, how you're going to communicate. And what we find right now in Canada is that a lot of small businesses that, we have been running for the last 30 years, which really had the conditions to build that business, they never really planned for how they were going to transition when they wanted to get out of the business. And family business have this big dilemma. And so what I'm telling you is that if you're going to get into a family business, you better also plan how you're going to get out of that family business in 30 or 40 years later. And if you're going to get into a partnership, you better have a partnership agreement with your partners so that there's no surprises in terms of expectations. Because sometimes there's assumptions that are made, you get a partner, you shake hands and you start this business, and then you find out that your partner has different ideas on how to run this business than you do, or has different ideas of, who gets, how you share the profits, and the whole idea is that think about this before you get in, you get into this business. So again, here's the types of family ownerships. Sole ownership, one family member, they operate it, or it's a partnership, so that you have different parts of the family that are partners, or you have concentrated, so maybe a few out of the family, and it's a subset of the ownership control, and they run that business, and then any descendant is eligible to be an owner in this distributed. So how much involvement is really important as what comes in, and then here's all the challenges, the roles and the rules, the creation of silos, missing groups in the governance model, all those things. And I talk about my bakery experience with those three brothers. There's a lot of conflict going on, and they never kept it a secret. It was in front of all the employees, and all three brothers had a different approach on what should be done. And the older brother wanted to run a traditional business, and the middle brother, he just wanted to make money, right? So there was kind of things that you could see that if you don't lay this out, if you don't have maybe someone come in and set up the expectations for this business, you could run into a lot of problems. So here's it's called a RACI model, and people use this in projects all the time, not alone how to run a business. But you find out in the parties that are around that business, being it the owner or the family itself, the management that run that business, or even the overseer like the board of directors, each has a different role and responsibility. And that's what this RACI does, is it makes sure that it's covered, so that that the owner, the R is responsible for many, many things. All right, and accountable to the board members. That's normally because they're the oversight going on. Whereas the board, are accountable for a lot of the operation. All right, and the thing is that maybe the CEO can select the board member, but the board needs to be consulted. That's right. And this one here is that in different types of decisions, the family has to be at least informed on what's going on. Okay, so that's how you do that, and you set that I've worked this in projects where the sponsor versus the project manager versus the stakeholders would be set up in what we call a RACI to find out who is responsible and accountable for what. But again, succession planning it's crucial, and that's right now it's a dilemma in Canada because there's a lot of older people wanting to move out of their businesses because they've they're up in their 70s and 80s and say, hey, how do we get out of this? And there's a lot of tax implications, so you need to really understand the tax side of that. And how do you do that? So you could sell stock to the family members, you could create it, you could put it into a living trust. There's all these things. So you should be, up to speed on what that is. And so you need this clear exit plan. Like I said, you need as much as a plan of getting into the business as you do getting out of that business, when you're running your own business. All right. So now we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. This is just it's just a path. There's no test on this. I found this. I actually used this in some of the work that I did for federal development. I did some work with some of their agencies, to help small businesses. And if you go through these steps, you can see what you need to do to set up your business and be successful. Right from what market are you going to go into, defining who your target market is, and we're going to talk about ideal customers. Thinking about topic 7, I think, and then define that ideal customer, the customer persona. Define the competitive position. And really what this is all about. The 3 things I told you about, right? What's your value proposition? What's your strategy, and what's your business model? And then one additional one is that who's your key customer and how you're going to do that. So that's what this chart does. Something that you should know, there's some kind of related question on the test about what is customer acquisition cost. You're not going to have to calculate it, but you better know what it is. So at the end of the day, what does it cost you to bring in a customer? There's advertising, there's a trial period. Will they, maybe they test your piece, and then, so what's the cost of marketing plus the cost of sales? over the customers. So how does that come together in terms of, if this is a good ratio for your business or not? And the next thing is that you can see that, you'll go into a market and you want to know how big that available market is, right? And in some cases, that entire available market you can't serve. So inside of that, what can be served in that market, and then that's the SAM. So that's a served available market, and then here you formulate what is your target market. When you're going in, to run that business. And then one other piece to know is, what's a minimum viable product, and that's the most rudimentary thing that you need to do. So you create this concept, all right? And then, so this is mainly for new products. So it's a new product or a new service, and you have this concept of what it could look like. So you put it together, and then you test it, and that's proof of concept to see, if people are going to buy this product, if they understand how to use it, how is it available, and then you can say, yeah, okay, this works. Okay, so let's now put a prototype together and test it. And that's, I talked about Peterborough being a test city for Procter & Gamble. So they'll have a new sense of, a mouth chemical that gives you a healthier mouth. And what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, how do we create that product? And it'll come up with this product that, is in the form of a tablet that you take, all right? And then they'll test that tablet. And then what they'll take a look at is that what features and benefits at a minimum do you need to have to be able to sell this thing, all right? And that's what they call, MVP, the minimum viable product. And there's good reasons for doing that, because let's just talk about, like a software, and maybe it's I'm trying to think of a software here that for printing, all right? A software for printing different things. So you don't quite know how this is going to work in the market. So you'll create that software so it has a minimum viable product, right? And when you do that, that people are going to buy it because, it does have that value that you're taking. But then, that once you start learning the customer and how they're using it, you can develop better features and create more value, and then create more revenue because you've created that more value. So it gives you some place to go to. And here's and this is a little bit unrelated. It's not in the test, but I wanted to kind of really give you an understanding of this marketing strategy is as old as Adam and Eve, all right? And it's good, better, best. And the good, is really the minimum viable product. And what you do is, you start, let's just an example. So a basic model of a smartphone, that would be, the minimum viable product. But then, Apple comes out and says, hey, what if we put, a GPS on that smartphone? Wow, okay, that's a mid-range smartphone with extra features. So you can charge a little more. And then there's people out there that want, the best. And they say, hey, we'll have a smartphone that really can, translate different languages, it's an instant translator when you go on tour. All right. And that's best. So that minimum viable product gets you a point to launch, to establish a better version and a best version. And it's known that if you offer these three levels of features and benefits, chances are you will push your customers up the value, and most of your sales will be between better and best, rather than sometimes just, if you just have the good, that's it, right? And you'll up your possible revenues. Okay, so that's where that is. I don't want to talk about this, but now there's different entrepreneurial aspects in topic 3, Timmons model, as talked about, where you understand where the opportunity is versus the resources you need to mine that opportunity, and what team that you need to put together to be able to put that business plan together and make it happen for your business. So just to know a little bit about this piece. Again, Michael Gerber, this is something that I read and I've used for helping small businesses. It's amazing, and just the gist of what Michael Gerber is all about is that most people start a business because they're good at something. All right, and so what that means is you're a technician. So look I started a water treatment business. Why? Because I was a chemical engineer, and I understood. I did water treatment on a large scale. So I started a water treatment business. All right. And then what happens then, I started off as a technician, right? And then the business gets bigger. So all of a sudden now you have people in your organization that you have to manage. So you need to be a manager as well. And then you're really, doing really, really well, and you need to start looking towards the future. And that's where he calls that the entrepreneur part of it, but I call it the visionary part of it. And what happens is why businesses fail is because a lot of people are stuck in the first mode. They run into problems, and what do? They want to go work in the back room because that's what they're good at. And they don't really manage the business, across the requirements of being a manager as well, and looking at the future. And the whole crux of it is that you should be working on the business as much as you are working in the business. And I'll tell you, that was a revelation for me. I'd strongly recommend that you take a look at that. So don't lose sight as a technician. You're owning the business. Okay, talked about that. Good to just know who Albert Shapiro is. This slide was taken right out of the slide deck and in topic 3 in Blackboard. So go through that slide deck. Because he talks about the 5 personas of entrepreneurs. The curious entrepreneur, the ready to go entrepreneur, the joiner, the amplifier, the corporate entrepreneur. So this is what I call the intrapreneur. Remember doing that. You can have do some real great things inside of a company, and drive them to do that. And know a little bit about who John Baptiste Say is, and that's it. Okay. Okay. So let's see here. So any questions at all? You can just unmute and ask me a particular question about about the deliverables, or your second assignment is coming up soon, and I'd really love you to download that assignment and read all the instructions and find out what you need, because the better that you do the research, the better marks that you're going to get on doing that that particular assignment. So any questions at all? Anybody can unmute. You want to chat? I'll check the chat. You can okay. And Tamara, thank you for letting me know that my slides weren't showing. I really appreciate that. Okay, so again, please keep those emails coming. If you have questions, and especially if they're relevant to your counterparts, I will answer that question to you personally, and then I will, put it on announcements on Blackboard so everybody can take advantage of it. So you've got a little bit of a workload this week to go through those 8 surveys, and then you have to come together with your teams. And I know there was a little bit of a glitch on 1 or 2 teams. It sounds like they're coming together, but again, if you cannot contact a particular member and they weren't part of the learning team charter, please let me know. And if you're going to put in a team submission with someone who didn't contribute, just let me know that on the submission that who did the contributions, and they will get marked accordingly. Okay. All right?
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Take care, sir.